Hi, I'm Michael Hartman.
I'm Naomi Liu.
And I'm Mike Rizzo. And this is OpsCast,
a podcast for marketing ops pros
and RevOps pros.
Created by the Mo Pros, the #1 community for marketing operations professionals.
Tune in to each episode as we chat with real professionals to help elevate you in your marketing operations career.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast, brought to you by marketingops.com. Powered by all those Mo Pros out there. I'm your host, Michael Hartman, joined today by two co-hosts. I got both Naomi Liu and Mike Rizzo.
Hey.
Are we all recovered? Are we all recovered from Mopsapalooza 2024?
We're 2 weeks post-event.
Yeah,
we're feeling okay. I'm feeling good.
Well, a little bit of time away. It's been a while since all three of us have been recording together, right?
It has been too long.
Yeah, way too long, for sure.
So,
I'm excited.
Yeah, and hard to believe we're like approaching 4 years of doing this. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that blows my mind.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into this because we've got a great guest today. So joining us today is Kelly Robinson to talk about how our workplace environment impacts our work and our teams. So you may be wondering, how's that tie in? We'll make sure that comes clear. But Kelly has designed experiences and offices for several influential tech companies through her career, creating conscious workplaces for Airbnb, SoundCloud, Headspace, and many others. Her mission has been to deepen our connection to the ultimate space we all share. That is our planet. In the wake of the 2020 pandemic, Kelly turned her focus from the workplace to our homes. Makes sense. Helping households navigate the new normal of working from home through online design courses and private sessions. Beyond her work in design, she is a spiritual seeker driven by a deep desire to nurture the human spirit and strengthen our relationship with our planet through the way we experience built environments. I almost said speaker instead of seeker, but you are also a speaker too. So Kelly, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, everyone.
Yeah, we're excited. So you and Naomi are both in Vancouver, right? You haven't, I know you spend part of your time outside of Vancouver, but you're there.
All right. In Canada.
Nice. Yeah. Love it.
It's just been over a year, I think. Right. We have a mutual friend that reached out to me last year and was like, hey, I have this friend and I think you guys would totally vibe. And so we set up a lunch date and he was right. Hit it off right from the begining.
That's funny. A play date.
Right from the jump.
An adult play date. Yes. That actually sounds kind of bizarre, but yeah. I should have say that. I'm like, wait a minute.
When it's kids, it's totally fine.
Yeah. Right? No. We went for lunch. Okay. So.
All right.
We're going to go with that.
You supped. All right. Sounds good. Well, it's great to have you here. So I know I shared a quick rundown of your background and experience, Kelly. So, but maybe if you could take us through that in a little bit more detail. And I think in particular, like how the whole COVID lockdown, all that kind of stuff impacted what you were doing and what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to take you through that. So I guess kind of backing up a little bit, what most people might not realize or know when they look at my design portfolio is that I'm actually an autodidactic designer. So I didn't study design or architecture in the traditional sense. Really, I've been more intuitive the whole way through. So my background is actually more about hospitality and really focused on a lens of like nurturance, really nurturing humans in any space, any size, any spectrum. So that really, bringing all of that together and landing at Airbnb back in 2010 when we were just 10 people working in the founder's apartment, I just knew that if I were to treat this space, in a really hospitable way and the people as such, that I just had the sense that things would come, and they did. So, the company grew very fast, and then I was designing spaces for companies all over the world and had a pretty colorful 10-year career kind of going wherever the projects were to really create spaces that nurtured the humans inside of them. And, fast forward to 2020, when the entire world changed in the matter of like a week, I also knew that the design brief of our homes essentially changed overnight. That, our homes that used to hold us through regular life pre-COVID, it was a completely different need that we had out of our homes at that point. And so that's when I started shifting and trying to figure out how can I possibly help at this time when everyone's freaking out, including myself. How can our homes now become the most nurturing they can be to kind of get us through this difficult time? So yeah, I started offering free design sessions through Zoom. People would show me their homes through Zoom. And I couldn't believe how helpful that I was able to be for people, and how people also intuitively knew that like they needed to change their environment so that they could adapt to like the global change that was happening. And they got so much relief from it. And that was a really exciting moment to help and learn how these design skills could kind of expand and be used in other ways and help people through hard times. So, yeah.
I have read, like, is there like a most radical change, like, story you can tell? Like, for me, my wife and I are looking at doing a room addition right now because my children need to like have their own rooms, and the room I'm currently sitting in is one of the other rooms. So we need to like figure out a way to either I go rent office space,
right, or
I invest in the property and try to like add on a little space or something. But so that would be an extreme thing in my mind.
And this kind of thing was totally normal during COVID. You have to like remember, like some people were alone, freaking out in their space. They got let go from their jobs. Some people were suddenly had to work full time and manage 2 young kids. Like it's a reprioritization of the real estate that you have access to already. So yeah, your situation is incredibly normal. One that comes to mind, one of my clients had this like storage closet that was just full of junk. And she was let go from her tech job during COVID. And she ended up transforming that old storage closet, moving everything out, clearing away a bunch of stuff she didn't need, and turning it into an art studio. And now she is working full time as an artist, making double what she made on her tech salary, just because she reclaimed this space.
I love that.
And came back to what she really wanted to become. So yeah, lots of stories of transformation through that time. Yeah.
Yeah, I could have definitely used your help.
Still here if you need support.
Okay. Yeah, you might get a call from you.
I think it's so to me, it's like I think it's. I think clearly, right. That whole time was a really tough one for a lot of reasons, and I think still we've got the outcomes of it. But I was really hopeful that it would bring about some positive things too. Right? I think this like. Because we got to see people in their real lives, right? I think this like awareness of the like this real life component. The thing I worried about, and I still know people who do this, myself included, like is there's when you're doing this work from home thing, it's really hard to separate. Okay, I'm now working versus I'm now at home. Like I'm curious. Like I know, like some people they have a space and they go in there. I'm working, and they go out. I'm not working, but not everybody has that ability. Like how like from a design standpoint, I'm curious, like how did you help people through that?
Absolutely. There's, everyone's different. Everyone has different needs and ways of going about massive life change like that. Some people really like to have a really clear parameter. There's like a room where they close the door and they're in work mode, and then they exit that space and they're in this other mode. And for some people, they really welcomed the merger of humanity into the workplace. You guys saw that clip of, I think he was a news anchor and his kids start coming in while he's trying to deliver the news, right?
I was just thinking about that, yeah.
Like the most perfect scene. And some people have been really craving the ability to be more human at work and through the internet, like through Zoom, whatever it is. So, it really depends. And I think organizations as a whole really need to honor, like, first of all, get clear on the reality of what their people want and knowing that that's going to be a spectrum. And then really trying to allow people to guide themselves through what is best for them. There's a lot there, a whole topic for sure. Yeah, Becky.
Hey everyone, Mike Rizzo here, CEO of MarketingOps.com and co-host of OpsCast. I've got a little secret to share with you, something that's been one of the best kept perks of our community until now. At MarketingOps.com, we've built a hiring program that's changing the game for marketing operations recruitment, and we're finally sharing it with the world. Our community is over 22,000 strong, and within that, we have over 4,400 members who are actively and passively seeking new opportunities. These are seasoned professionals with skills and experience spanning platforms like HubSpot, Pardot, Marketo, and so much more. Plus, we can help you fine-tune your outreach, targeting exactly the right candidates by region, years of experience, seniority level, or even agency experience. But here's the real cherry on top. When you hire through our program, your new team member gets a free membership or a virtual ticket to our annual conference. From day one, they're not just stepping into a new role, they're getting access to the training, networking, and support they need to hit the ground running. So if you're ready to unlock this incredible opportunity, it's time to let this secret out. Visit marketingops.com and find your next star teammate today. Thanks for listening, and as always, keep optimizing.
So, kind of getting into this like real life versus work life. I mean, I know you have a story that you've talked about publicly, I think, about losing your father, like, and how that was handled. I was really fascinated to, maybe you could share that with our audience, and like, I don't know if that is also impacted how you thought about like the spaces and the environments that people work in as well.
Absolutely. I think from the beginning, I've always looked at spaces not just as, it's so many things. It's the extension of the brand. It's the lifestyle that you can be provided by your employer. But also the spaces that we live and work in are ultimately there to nurture us. They can have sort of like a motherly approach. They can hold us through difficult times. And I remember going through, and I knew this, I've always known that like our spaces, the way that we arrange our spaces are ways that we kind of mother ourselves and mother our people, nurture our people. And I was going through really my first big understanding of grief a couple of years ago, almost exactly this time of year, 2 years ago, and I lost my dad. And I, for the first time, really got that initiation of what deep grief really does to humans. And I remember sending a Slack message to my team. I was working for this prefabricated home building company here in Vancouver at the time. And I just said, guys, it's time for me to go to my dad's bedside and be there till the end. And it was such a vulnerable moment because people knew that he was sick, but I don't think I had really expressed how, like where he was really at. And within seconds, I got a note from every single person, including the CEO, that was like, literally just take as much time as you need. Like, we've got you. Just go be fully present there. And the way that I was like treated and held during that time by the organization that I was supported made me like infinitely loyal to them. Like to this day, I will do anything, to be in support because they supported me. And I think bringing that reality of grief to the forefront and inviting our full humanness into the workforce, like I don't see a downside to that. Granted that people are comfortable doing that. And I'm not saying that's for everyone. People grieve differently, but sure. I do think bringing that humanity forward is going to make stronger companies and better relationships within them.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful that you're willing to share that, because I think you and I talked about this. Like, I think so many times in the workplace, especially, I do think that COVID time was a tipping point a little bit, in that there are often these topics that are sort of taboo, right? We just don't talk about this at work. We don't talk about the challenges. We had a pet that died, or a close one who died, went through a miscarriage, right? All those kinds of things that I think I just have got to the point where I just truly believe like it's hard. Like if you're a leading people, right? Assuming that there's this very rigid, like, here's my work persona, here's my life non-work persona, and that there's no overlap. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And so I think it's really important that we bring those things out. I mean, we've talked about mental health on this podcast with a couple of different people. And I think all those things should be out there as viable topics, as long as people are comfortable with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, broadly, organizations, obviously, I think, it probably falls more into the people manager, people HR side of the organizational structure, but finding ways to just educate, everybody, right? Whether you're managing people or not. I think it's easy to lose sight of, it's really easy to lose sight of the fact that people have a whole bunch of other stuff going on in the world, right? And trying to find that empathy that you don't know, Like they're a little bit short with you today. You have no idea what happened this morning, right? Or this afternoon, or what phone call they just got, or whatever. So it's just like operating with a bit of grace and trying to remember that there's so much more happening outside of the place of work. And, you know, I don't think age is a factor there, right? Like, you know, earlier in your career, maybe you're fortunate enough to not have experienced some things. Bless you if you are, because good for you, right? But I think it's our responsibility as people managers and business builders to figure out ways to like try to articulate that those things are happening, right? Mm-hmm. And for those of us that have gone through it earlier in our lives, you know, just try to remember it and reflect on it as you engage with folks, right? But I love that like you're able to like take these experiences and sort of morph them into the work that is filling your cup up today and like helping people transform the way that they're feeling about their work and all that stuff. I mean, I lost my mom a year and a half ago now. And it was like the worst possible time. I was literally launching Mopsapalooza that year, right? And like she was supposed to be there to come take tickets with us and all this stuff, right? And it was a 5-year battle, right? So she shouldn't even have made it that long, according to doctors. And in general, like you just have to like, there was a whole bunch of things that we changed here in the house, right? Like you can't see it in the video behind me, but there's like a little, you know, heart behind me, and that's part of mom, right? And then there's like a star that my wife like dedicated to her, and you know, we're rounding out my space to like make her a part of everything that she was so excited about, right, within the community, and that made me feel really good. But anyway, sorry, this isn't about me. This is just about like, I'm trying to tie it back to like, yeah, this stuff matters. Like really it
does, Mike. And thank you for sharing, because what you started out by saying before you shared your personal story, which thanks for sharing, was that, you know, we have to remember to give people a little bit more grace sometimes if they're short. And when we come forward with our story, everybody else is like, oh my gosh, me too. You know, I was standing on stage telling the story about my dad. I asked people to raise their hand who had gone through some sort of loss in the last few years. Every single person raised their hand. And so bringing that forward, the grace is there. It's instantly there when we know what each other are going through. And this makes stronger teams. This makes stronger organizations. This makes happier people who feel that they can really bring their whole selves to their workplace. So thank you for sharing.
And I think it's like so important to lead by example, right? I think it's one thing to say to an organization or say to your team, like, yes, like I want to encourage open dialogue and put that out there. But unless you share your own experiences, of course, in appropriate context, like it's really difficult for those that you work with in your immediate space to do the same, right? And if you lead by example, I think it can really signal to others that, yeah, it's okay to discuss these personal challenges. You know, while I haven't had, you know, a loss of a close family member or a parent, you know, last year, and Kelly, you know, like I went through a very difficult international adoption, right? Where my husband and I, we brought home a toddler, and overnight I became a parent, right? And I had a bit of time off. And then when I went back to work, it was, okay, do I just pretend that like everything's exactly the same when this morning I had a toddler who really does not know me, basically is going through a huge traumatic experience herself, and me try to be, okay, so how about that pipeline? You know what I mean? Like, it's just not, it's just not like where my mind was at, you know? And I think just me being very open and honest with my team, like, yeah, guys, sorry, like, I'm just not feeling this meeting today. Let me just reschedule it to tomorrow, or you know what? Let's just axe it. Let's just talk about it over Teams or email, you know? And I think that that's just something that you have to also, like, I had to give myself a lot of grace too, being like, you know, I am thinking in my mind, yeah, like I can be this like badass working mom and do all of it at the same time. But I really needed this transition space and the team to really understand I'm not in the headspace to do this today, you know?
100%.
Yeah, this is all bringing to forefront for me. I'm a big like fan of the Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People thing. And there's I think it's one of the 7 habits, but if it's not, it's a tenet of that, which is like seek first to understand, then be understood. And he had a story that illustrated it that really I still think about today when I'm dealing with someone who's reacting or acting in a way that's out of character. And it was like, on a subway or a train somewhere, kids running around, dad not paying attention, and he's about to go say something to the dad, like, why don't you get your kids under control? And it turns out mom had just passed away, and he just like didn't know, like the kids didn't know how to handle it. Dad was still struggling with it. And it was like, oh yeah, like we don't know what is going on with somebody else. And so anyway, we're like, this has been, I really wanted to bring this up because I think it's important. Like, I think it's an important topic in general, but maybe we can get back to like what you have been doing. So I know you've been recently speaking and you've been talking about this notion of in the workplace, I think it's mostly in the workplace, nurturers versus rocket builders.
Yes.
So first up, maybe like set the stage. What do those mean? What do you mean by that? And then we can start to kind of tie that into what our listeners are doing on a daily basis.
Yes, love it. So yeah, I've been speaking kind of internationally about really around the future of work and my vision for the future of work. And this notion of the rocket builder and the nurturer really came from my 10 years in tech, having this sense that there's this pattern of progress for the sake of progress without actually truly considering whether that progress is leading us to a healthier collective place as an organization, as a world, and really kind of I'm kind of at odds about these two directions. And there's this Chinese proverb that comes to mind that I'm wondering if y'all have heard about, but it says the longest journey a man will ever take is the 18 inches from his head to his heart. And for me, there are head forward builders, rocket builders, even leaders who are, they're building the product. They're the coders, they're the data analysts, they're the really cerebrally strategic thinkers. And then there's also the nurturers at the organization. These are heart forward leaders. These people are emotionally attuned. They have their ear to the ground. They know the pulse of the organization. They're the galvanizers. They're the ones putting on the conferences, like anything with food and beverage and ritual. And both of these people, and of course there's always some that are a spectrum of both, but both of these types of people are extremely important in every organization. And I would argue that they become more powerful when they're balanced with the other. And so I've kind of seen a pattern where the nurturers are sort of less valued and less empowered, where it's all about the builders. And again, this is like a tech lens. So, you can bridge build to marketing. Maybe it comes through in some way, but really trying to like lift and raise both of these people and make sure that the organization is equally balanced with them.
Yeah, I think this is actually what I'm thinking of. And it just occurred to me, even though we've talked about this a little bit before, is how this kind of, we should be thinking about this very consciously, I think, when we're making like both decisions about where we go work, right? Do we understand how we would fit into the team based on what, where we lie on that spectrum, if at all? And then on the other side, right, when we're hiring, right? If we understand what our team makeup is, how can we, if we've got a bunch of, rocket builders, right? And you kind of over heavy on that, and we need somebody who can help bridge build and help be the go-between when they're butting heads or whatever. I think there's some value in that. I'm a bit like I've done with my teams before. I haven't done it in this context, but I've done. You can pick whichever one. I've used StrengthsFinder, right, doing an assessment and then sharing with everybody. And I think there's something really valuable in. There's some understanding yourself is, I think, good, right? Self-awareness is good, but also the real value from my standpoint has been seeing how others go like, oh, this is why, we've had trouble communicating on something or why we couldn't work. And it's like that insight. I remember I was doing with a leadership team at a company. There was like 20, 25 people, like it's crazy that many people, but it was a large group. We'd all done Myers-Briggs in this case. And if you're familiar with that, right, the first run is the introversion versus extroversion one. Well, we all did this, and we then did a thing together where we somebody facilitated revealing our results and what they meant. The president of the organization realized she was like everybody on here except for like 2 people is pretty far on the east side. So no wonder we can't get a meeting to finish on time. Like everybody wants to talk. Just like small insights like that were really valuable. Absolutely. So I can imagine something like this would be good too. Mm-hmm. So how have you seen that, like future of work standpoint? Like how have you seen that are you finding that's resonating with people? Are they thinking, like, taking this back and applying it?
Yes, I mean, I definitely get a lot of people coming up to me afterwards and just thinking they've never like seen it in that frame before, but they can completely understand where they might be a little, top heavy with regards to just like sprinting at goals without really having the like heart forward checks and balances of like who's setting these goals? Is this really where we want to go? I think one example that I talk about is AI, right? If you look at the amount of people that are working in AI jobs right now, 98% of them are about progress and 2% of them are about safety, even though we know we have major safety issues to think about with deploying this kind of technology. So yeah, just trying to get people to think more from the intelligence of their hearts with what it is that we're trying to create and build together, rather than like focusing entirely from the cerebral mind.
Yeah. I'm curious, Naomi and Mike, if you like, what's your reaction to all this? Like, does it resonate with you too? Or have you you already, like, if you're like me, I'm already like, oh, how can I apply this? Like with the team I'm working with. Take your time. It's all right.
Naomi's got a, she's like,
she's not sold on this, I'm going to guess.
That's okay.
she's not making one opinion or the other.
I just want to hear what you have to say, Mike, before I form mine,
What Mike said. Yeah.
What Mike said.
Yeah.
No, I've done, I don't know. I have a deep appreciation. I mean, look, everything is built around this community, right? So my like the amount, it took a while. I don't know. I don't want to have this come off as like a negative tone by any stretch at all. But it was interesting, the dynamic between my wife, who many of you listeners know, Amanda, and I, changed over the years as the community evolved, because I would bring to light some of the things, like just in discussion of things I was going through in the community. Right. And, I would be talking about how we need to do a particular push or something for an event. And I would stress that I couldn't do this thing that somebody was asking me to do because it just didn't meet my moral values and our community's code and guideline. Right. I think a really simple example of that is I do my very, very best to stay off of manels, all male panels. Right. At a bare minimum, at least let there be a diverse candidate if it's an all male panel, right? And even with some of the tone that we put into the messaging that we put out, right? It's how do we ensure we're just sort of like paying attention to how people are going to perceive the messages that we send, and that decisions on, do we change our logo during Pride Month? Right. These are like, is it just for show? No, those are real conversations we've all had in the community amongst all the leaders, whether it's Naomi or Audrey or Dan or whoever. Like, I'll talk to anybody about this stuff, because we don't want it to look like we're just doing it just to save face. Like, that's not what that's for. And then, we don't want to disrespect the rest of the times that there could be a color or logo change, right? And so it's this really interesting balance of just trying to understand how to operate with as much empathy as possible while keeping a business moving forward. All that being said, right, as I reflect back on my time in sort of corporate, as an embedded participant in an organization, right? I too have done those Myers-Briggs things and whatever other tests I've done. I have rarely seen them put into practice in a way that really was meaningful. Mm-hmm. Other than the sort of enlightening moment, like, aha, I understand. We have the room filled with eyes and, whatever the letters all meant, right? Outside of that moment, even we put in effort to like pin our profile types to our cubicles or whatever you wanted to call them, right? So when people walked up, they at least knew, like, well, at least I did. but I don't know that moved the needle, right? Like people immediately default back to like, I got to get a job done, and I don't have time to think about this stuff. So I don't know. It's good to be enlightened and be educated on it. Putting it into practice is fascinating because somehow we sort of like skirt around it still, even once we kind of know it. So that's my long-winded answer to how I think about this stuff. I think it's really important. It's just hard to see it come to fruition in practice.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think like
see what Mike said.
Yeah, what Mike said. Like I honestly, literally, Mike, I'm serious. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say verbatim exactly the same thing.
No, that doesn't surprise me.
One thing I will
reason that we're all in the community together.
Right, there you go.
Well, that's another thing I will say is, this notion and this pattern for me became visible after 10 years in tech, right? And for me, working with like the marketing team, the marketers within tech, they're the storytellers. They know how to bridge build the truth of what's being built to the mass, to the people. So I do think that, I'm kind of preaching to the choir when I'm talking to marketing folks about the importance of leading with the heart, because you guys understand people. You are galvanizers. You are, storytellers.
Well, it's particularly interesting. Sorry, Hartman.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
The thing that I'll say is, and this sort of goes back to the whole like marketing ops isn't just marketing kind of a thing, right, but we're part of marketing. But what's really interesting about marketing ops is that I think in a lot of ways, I don't want to pretend like somehow we're way more like we're forced to interact with lots of different people more so than any one group or what have you. But it definitely happens a lot, right? Like we have to be able to translate what the business's goals are and what somebody else's challenges are, and look at a tech stack and look at the buyer's journey and try to like say no without saying no a lot, right? And so all of those bits and bobs, like I feel like there's a interesting, delicate sort of transition of the art of the possible in this role that is often a little different than I think how it comes to light in other particular marketing roles, for that matter. Like,
well, I think it's what I was going to say is I think when Kelly just said like marketers tend, I think what you were saying, Kelly, I don't want to put words in your mouth, was like they tend to lean more towards the nurturer sort of side of that spectrum as opposed to the rocket builder. And I know there's exceptions, so don't come after me because I know there are exceptions. But I actually think that people in marketing ops probably in general tend to lean the other way. And I think it's, again, sort of like to your point, Mike, whether or not, how does this come to life in understanding that? I think it's a useful model in my head to go, when I'm getting frustrated with our creative team or our content team arguing about the placement of an image or the grammar that we're using on an ad or something like that, when I'm like, we just need to get this thing out, right? I guess like this is good to understand that there's more than one side to this, and why like this is not because they're not necessarily trying to like be a stubborn in the way person. It's just part of their nature.
Yes.
Yeah. That resonates for sure. And I do think, I definitely, as you were describing nurturer and rocket builder, I was sort of reflecting back on the RevOps hot take panel that we did, Naomi, at Mopsapalooza. And, I challenged the notion that certain things were maybe not as exciting for someone. I think Steven Stouffer was talking about like some of the types of things that a RevOps person might be doing or a marketing ops person might be doing. Like you want to be attached to marketing because it's this like exciting sort of thing. And I said, well, for the intellectually curious, working with data and like thinking about the strategic kind of use of go-to-market act, like that side of it is actually really exciting to me. Right? And I think to a lot of marketing ops folks too. I don't want to say that they're all going to fall into that category, But it is interesting that I think it would be fun to do a survey, right? To say like how many of us sort of straddle the line between a little bit of both, right? This nurture rocket builder concept. Because I think you have to think about edge cases all the time in marketing ops, right? And you're like, oh, how are they going to respond when I tell them this next thing, or that it's going to take, 40 days to get this done because I have to stop this other project or whatever. Like I don't know. It's fascinating.
I'm curious what you would define yourself as, Mike. Are you a nurturer, a rocket builder, or a bit of both? I think, right, nurturers sometimes prioritize harmony over urgency or even innovation, right? And, like trying to keep that peace. And rocket builders, to me, can sometimes like neglect team dynamics or even emotional well-being in the pursuit of like, we need to meet this goal.
Right. Accomplishment.
Accomplishment. Yeah. Possibly create burnout if, that pace and that expectation, it's sometimes relentless, and I think there's a time and place for both, but that's not also sustainable in the long term.
Yeah. So it's weird to talk about oneself because I was like, oh, as you were describing it, Kelly, I was like, where do I think I fall on that? I do see it for myself. I think it's a bit of both. My default state is nurture in terms of just like for our listeners, if you aren't aware, you haven't met my whole family at Mopsapalooza yet. I'm a product of a divorced household. I was raised by many parents and many grandparents and many aunts. And I once told my family that I would write a book one day called The Middleman. And I was constantly in the middle of everybody, right? Like trying to keep the peace. Family dynamics are fascinating when you have large families, particularly ones that, are separated, et cetera. And so my default state is don't rock the boat. Be helpful to others. And then as a business, entrepreneurial minded individual, I am definitely more on the innovation rocket builder, like go like innovate and push the boundaries a little bit. But if it's in the way of someone else's ability to have their success or to be a part of that journey, and it was to hinder my ability to have a great relationship and build something alongside somebody else, I would defer to making sure that we included those other people. That's just my natural state. I've had to teach myself to be more of the rocket builder in everything that we're doing now, right? Like being more direct in my language, I think is what I have learned, which I'm clearly struggling with today because I just keep babbling on and on.
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like a little bit neurotic on those two dynamics, right? I think on the one hand, I very much like want to like move stuff forward. I like a tendency toward action. At the same time, I feel like I do have a bit of that nurture in me. I often tell coaching clients who are people managers, right? Like, and this is a really fine line. You want to be friendly, but not friends necessarily with the people who report to you. And if they become friends, that's okay. But I think it's a real delicate balance. Do you have something to say, Naomi?
Well, it was interesting because I don't know how to like verbalize this, but I sometimes wonder after I have conversations or, just one-on-ones with folks either on my team or even, those that I'm maybe mentoring or whatnot. I'm like, I want to listen to them and have them feel like I'm mentoring or helping them. But I also don't want to feel like I'm momming them, if that makes sense. Right. Like I don't want to. Sometimes I come away, I'm like, wow, did I come across as like their parent, or like, especially if they're new grads and they're trying to enter the workforce and they're looking for advice on, how they should approach a certain situation or conflict in the workplace. And, is my advice coming to them from a position as a leader or as a peer or somebody who, cares for them as also a friend. And I don't know, it's maybe just this weird internal dialogue that I have where I'm very conscious of not coming across as giving them advice as if I was their parent, so.
I'm sure I think we all probably deal with that. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
So,
because I've been on the receiving end of that, and sometimes I still am, where I get talked to by, and I'm not necessarily saying in like the organization I work for or anything, but just in daily life, right?
No, I'm kidding.
Well, no, I'm not. I know I'm not. I don't know. It's hard for me to verbalize this, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it can come across as condescending, and I want to make sure that I'm not coming across as condescending to the people that I'm mentoring or people that report to me, because I don't appreciate it when it's the other way. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Kelly, another thing that there are probably other sort of spectrums we could talk about, but you also have been talking about, I think, in some of your speaking engagements about balance and neurodiversity. And again, like what does that mean to you, and how does it fit into the work, kind of future of work? We'll keep it at that.
Yeah, absolutely. This has become like a new topic. Like this was not something that people were talking about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I'm so grateful that this is coming up, that we're all like learning a new lens, that we can understand that people are just neurologically like very different, the way we take in a built environment, the way we feel in a space. And so I think for me, how it's landing is really as an organizational leader to really have an understanding, just like Mike said, about like the fringe of both sides, like the widest part of the spectrum, to really know your people. And then rather than just like designing something for right in the middle so that everybody gets a little bit of what they need, like really understanding that every single person deserves to have a safe place to do their work. And for some people, that means it's their home, and that's just what it's going to be. But just in thinking about the workplace, the work environment, what does that look like? Is there a place for people who are really easily overstimulated to go and have a place to process anything, whether it's emotional or just like a difficult problem that they're trying to work out in their mind, to like have take a beat so that they can find their creativity again. So, whether this like applies to the actual physical workspace or just the sort of the structure that organizations are putting on their people around hybrid work and working from home and whatever it is, like, I think we really need to go all the way to the full outer spectrum in order to provide something that everybody can equally benefit from. I think this is the big piece of neurodiversity and it coming forward.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that this is coming up. I don't know that I've seen it as much, but I feel like, so full transparency. So I'm married to a dyslexic, and I have a child that goes to a learning difference school, right? And we would classify him as what we call 2E, like twice exceptional, right? He's super smart, sometimes struggles with social interactions, right? He's not on the spectrum, right? That kind of stuff. But he's not, what do they call it? Neurotypical, right? And I think, so for me, having that exposure, right, I'm much more open to that and I think I was relatively open to diversity of ideas and thoughts, and have been for a long time, even though I've had people who've worked for me before told me I'm a control freak. But like, I really welcome like different ideas. And like, one of the things I try to do when I have a team is like really foster that environment where people can feel comfortable bringing those ideas. It doesn't matter how crazy they are. It doesn't mean we're going to do everything, right? But I think it's way more valuable to lead on that end of it. But are you seeing and hearing about that? And then like I don't know if you have any tips for how to make our work environments or how we lead teams, right, to take advantage of that? Because I do think it's an advantage if you're open to it.
I agree. I think, I've seen, and every organization is different. The culture is different. The scale is different. The resources are different. It's really hard to kind of create a blanket statement, but I can share a story that I have told that people really like for one kind of side of the spectrum. I had this company in LA which was founded by two women. And they really wanted to cultivate the permission to like cry at work. And so I literally designed a room of these like little pods that you could climb into and just like hide away. I don't really know if people actually cried, but I know that people would sneak into those pods to just take a beat and be completely unseen and just hide. This is like one end, very far end of like a spectrum, I would say, but just like allowing the full, and this theme is coming through all of these conversations. It's like letting ourselves feel grief and not have to put on a mask and pretend it's not there. Letting ourselves, lead forward with our heart, but at the same time, like not get too stuck in that we're like not missing where we have to go. And, similarly for people who are easily overwhelmed, and knowing and giving the grace to people who are showing up to the office that like sometimes this is a big stretch for them to like really be in an environment with 50 people. Like people get overwhelmed by that. So just really designing for that, understanding people enough to know, how to be more, graceful and accepting of the full spectrum of humanity, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I witnessed some hard things as a startup was going through multiple scale-up phases. One of the organizations I worked with, and people manager had to make some really hard choices, appointing leaders to roles that were newer at the company than those that had been around since the very beginning. You could imagine the level of tension that was in the room. You could cut it with a knife. And that particular leader, really got emotional with us as the information was shared, and, broke down, had tears. It was a woman. She was an incredible leader, and we loved working with her. And I have to say, I was outside of it because I wasn't up for the role. So I had this other perspective, right? Like it wasn't something for me. And I was just really aghast by the way that everybody responded to it. And I understand their personal bias and their frustration, right? That they wanted that position and they see it as potentially unfair. Mm-hmm. But I also watched as people sort of responded in a way that was like almost an expression of, wow, I can't believe you're being emotional like this, kind of a thing. And it was so dismissive of the pressure, right? And I couldn't not say anything, right? I had to say something to the room, and it fell on deaf ears, right? Because everybody's pissed off. but it's all of that. I share that story just to say it happens sometimes in public, not in a pod. And, people need to, we started with a message of have some grace, right? Like try to put yourself for just a moment in that person's shoes who's trying to make a really good decision for the business. And that is their, fiduciary responsibility as a leader. And, just do your best, people. That's all.
Mm-hmm. All right. I don't think I could add anything else to that. Okay. I mean, this is why I love coaching when I get the chance to do that, especially with people who are moving into leadership roles, because it's hard, right? It's hard to balance these things between, holding people accountable, but also, trying to support them as a whole person, and like do that balance. It's not easy, and then you start to question yourself. Did I let them go too far and then they've taken advantage of me, or was I too harsh? Right. And, I mean, maybe it's like we all need, if we're going to be a leader, we need to have some sort of like, I don't know, psychology type training, right? Because I think there's a lot that goes into it that is not, can I read a balance sheet or an income statement? It's like, how can I, get the most from this person on my team, or as the team as a whole, right? And sustain that for a period of time and celebrate. Like I had people leave for better, other opportunities. I felt like I was a part of it. Like I was happy for them, right? Yeah. It sucked for me in the moment, but I'm happy for them, and that's what I want.
Yeah. Today more than ever, right? We need, like, times are a changing. So it's like if you want a successful organization, focus on your people and your process and your product.
Yeah. I mean, I think,
go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just saying, like, I think my big takeaway from all this is like, yeah, whether it's a spectrum of, a neurodiversity one or the nurture versus rocket builder, male versus female, like all the, like, I think it's good. Like I'm taking away, like, it's good reminder that like we need to be thinking about this stuff. Like we need to stop and think about it occasionally if we're not, like, it's easy to just get caught up in the go, 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 go. I'm always on. I can't be human around the people I work with. Right. And I think it's, to me, like the big message here is like, we need to like rethink that if that's how we're thinking, and reset. So sorry, I interrupted you, Kelly.
No, I was just going to kind of building on that, just knowing also that this, like, I know, Michael, we talked about the word balance and how it feels just like not a good word because it's so unattainable and it like launches us towards perfection, which is just like makes us just throw our hands up and be like, I quit. It's really just about, like understanding who we are, what our nature is, and seeing the situation that's in front of us and just trying to like remember the other side and use this center point of balance just as something aspirational, like whenever we find that we need it. So balancing also, how much we understand and learn and study about psychology and leadership with just intuiting in the moment what the right thing to do is, right? And learning as we go and messing up and falling off the other way and coming back, right? It's, I'd forgotten that we, like, the notion of work-life balance always, for a long time I've struggled with that because I just don't think at a point in time, right, that you can expect to have balance. Now, if you are now over time, right, you need to figure out, if there are ups and downs, right, for our listeners, like I'm doing this like wave thing, right, because that's the way life is. You're going to have times where, work may overcome personal and vice versa. And I think for me, it's helpful to recognize like this is a season, right, where I may not feel in balance this particular moment, but am I on a trajectory that overall I can do that, and recognizing that at some point I need to try to get back towards that middle state, but I don't expect it. I think it's again, like giving yourself grace, right? Yeah. So like Naomi's story about, I want to come in, I want to be like this powerhouse working mother, which I'm sure she is, right? Mm-hmm. And like putting like all this pressure that you probably put on yourself, right? It's just like there are going to be days that are up and downs, and that's just the way it goes. Mm-hmm. That's it. So yeah, in fact, like it's interesting. I heard unrelated, like more in the line of like sports achievement, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it was a female track athlete had a bad workout, went to her coach and was like, it's a terrible workout today. She's like, think of it in thirds, right? When you're going after something challenging and a goal, like you're probably going to have, your days are going to be one of three types, right? It's going to be a great day. It's going to be a day that you're disappointed with, or it's going to be like on par. As long as the blend is somewhere like the thirds, you're probably okay. And that's like, to me, that stuck with me is like, oh, maybe that applies to just work and life in general. Absolutely. Love it.
So maybe we end there because Kelly agreed with me.
Because Kelly agreed with me. I think this has been awesome, Kelly. So thank you for joining us and getting this conversation going again. And we appreciate it.
Thanks for sharing all of your
Super
stories.
happy that you were able to join, Kelly.
Yeah. Naomi's the glue. She brought it all together. Kelly, again, thank you so much. It was a great conversation. It's like very thoughtful kinds of stuff, and I appreciate that. If folks do want to learn more, like get an opportunity maybe to hear you speak or hear about what you're talking about or doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm on both LinkedIn and I have my website, Kelly A. Robinson is where you can find me. So both on LinkedIn and kellyrobinson.com. And would love to connect with your community. Thank you for creating such an incredible group of people. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Absolutely. As always, thanks, Mike, Naomi. It's great to have you back again. It's always more fun with all of us. Anyway, and then thanks to our listeners, as always, for continuing to support us. As always, if you have ideas for topics or guests or want to be a guest, feel free to reach out to Naomi, Mike, or me, and we would be happy to talk to you about that. Until next time, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.